Alright guys, here are my notes on order of operations. Your target for today is you should be able to simplify expressions. And remember, expressions are just math sentences, things like 2 plus 5 or 3 times 7, things like that, using the order of operations. Now, the order of operations is an extremely basic topic. That's why we're doing it right away. That being said, though, we're going to need it from everything from equations, which is going to be our next chapter, to even formulas in geometry, which we're going to do a lot this year. So even though it's really basic, it is important to know. So that's why I'm wasting some time going over it. Now, the order of operations is sort of a tongue twister here. It is the rules established for evaluating an expression with more than one operation. So it's an expression with more than just 2 plus 5. It's 2 plus 5 times 7. It has more than one operation. The other big vocab word is going to be grouping symbols. Indicates operations that should be performed first. Now, typically you guys hear parentheses. Usually when you hear order of operations, you think of please, excuse, my dear Aunt Sally. But it's not just parentheses, especially this year. We're also going to use brackets, fraction bars, and there's some other ones as well. The order of operations, just like I said down here, that first one, instead of just parentheses, we're going to say grouping symbols. So, like I said, parentheses, brackets, fraction bars, square roots, things like that. And whenever you see these grouping symbols, you need to think there's a brand new problem inside of them, and that's the one that I have to do first. And we'll talk more about those when we see them. The next thing we're going to see is going to be simplify. E is exponents. And that's going to be things like 3 squared, 4 to the third, things like that. The next one is we're going to multiply and divide from left to right. And that's why people typically put them in a row like that instead of one right on top of each other, because dividing does not come after multiplying. It actually comes at the same time as it. It just happens from left to right. And the last one, the same way that multiplying and dividing is left to right, adding and subtracting is also left to right. All right, so now that we reviewed that, let's take a look at example 1 and do one together. My biggest tip for you is to do it one step at a time. People see something like this and they think they know what they're doing and hurry up and mess up. So instead of doing that, I'm going to look and see, okay, well, the very first thing is grouping symbols. I don't see any of those. I don't see any exponents. So now I'm going to multiply and divide from left to right. I see multiplying here and here. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 20, which is 80, plus 8 times 5, plus 4.8. Same thing, I'm going to look and see, do I see any other more multiplying? And I see it right there. 8 times 5 is 40. So now I have 80 plus 40 plus 4.8. And now, just like it said up here, we need to add and subtract from left to right. So I'm going to start on the left. 80 plus 40 is 120 plus 4.8. And 120 plus 4.8 is just 124.8. And that's it. So that's how you simplify an expression using the order of operations. Now, I have 2 examples for you guys to try on the next page. So would you pause the video, try them, and unpause it after you've had a chance to try it. All right, hopefully that was enough of a chance for you to pause it, because number 1, hopefully no one saw this subtraction sign. I did that first because remember, order of operations is please, excuse, my dear Aunt Sally, and multiplying comes before subtracting. So I'm going to multiply here and get 6 times 3 is 18. So now I have 25 minus 18, which 25 minus 18 is just 7. All right? So check your work there. Make sure that you did it in the right order for me. Number 2, I think, was a little bit easier because you are supposed to do dividing before subtracting. So it was in order, really. You get 7 minus 4, and 7 minus 4 is just 3. can get a little bit more difficult once we add grouping symbols into the mix. So like here, grouping symbols say whenever I see a problem, I have to do the stuff inside of those grouping symbols first. So for this one, I'm going to pretend that this 5 isn't even here. And I'm going to go 14 minus 3.8. So 14 minus 3.8 off on the side of our papers. Remember, we have to line up the decimals. I can't take away an 8 from 0, so I have to borrow and take away an 8 from 10 and make it 2. Drop down the decimal. 3 minus 3 is 0. 1 minus nothing is 1. So now I have 10.2. And now that I'm done with everything inside those parentheses, I'm going to bring back that 5 and say 5 times 10.2. Well, again, I'm going to have to go on the off on the side of my paper and do this. 10.2 times 5. Remember, with multiplying, you do not need to line up those decimals. So now it's just 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And 5 times 1 is 5. The big difference with multiplying, remember, is you have to count how many decimals are up there. 1 and 1. So 5 times 10.2 is 51.0, or just straight up 51. Okay? Example 3 says evaluate this one. Here's a fraction bar. You're going to see a lot of this year, where this fraction bar basically says do this, and then divide. So let's do the top first. 27 minus 3. Hopefully everyone knows it's 24. And 4 plus 2 is just 6. So now it says 24 divided by 6, which is 4. A more complex grouping symbol problem is something like example 4, where you have two different sets of grouping symbols. Just like we did before, I'm going to say, okay, let's only pay attention to the stuff inside the parentheses. But because there's two sets of parentheses, we should get rid of all of that first and just pay attention to that stuff, which that is pretty easy. It's 11 plus 8. 11 plus 8 is only 19. So now I'm going to rewrite everything, but instead of 11 plus 8, I'm going to write 19. And again, I still have grouping symbols, so before I multiply, even though multiplying comes first in order of operations, I'm going to take care of this grouping symbol and do 35 minus 19, which is 16. So now I have 4 times 16. And 4 times 16 is just 64. In case you don't believe me, 6 times 4 is 24. 4, 5, 6, 64. Okay? Would you guys please try these two? Pause your video, and then unpause it after you've had a chance. All right? So this first one, it looked just like one of those last examples we did. You're supposed to do that first. 27 minus 3 is 24. 4 plus 4 is 8. 24 divided by 8 is just 3. Number 4 says do grouping symbols first. So here's my first set of grouping symbols. It's the innermost ones. So I get minus 10 plus 7 is 17. 21 minus 17 is pretty easy. That is just 5. So now I have 2 squared times 5. Order of operations next. It is exponents, because that comes before multiplying. So 2 squared is 4. 4 times 5 is just 20. So your two answers on that were 3 and 20. All right? A big reason I'm going order of operations now is because we'll be doing a little bit of that, or a little bit of geometry next. So I'm going to show you a very simple geometry problem dealing with order of operations. So example 5 says find the area in the triangle to the right. Hopefully you guys remember your area formulas, especially of a triangle. It is A is equal to 1/2 base times height. And after plugging into this, I end up getting 1/2 times 4 times 11. And we just went over how to multiply fractions by regular numbers. You're supposed to turn them into regular numbers. And you could go 1 times 4 times 11, or remember we could always pre-reduce. And I see some nice pre-reducing going on right here. A 1 and a 2. 1 times 2 is 2 times 11 is 22. over 1. Or just straight up 22. All right? So would you guys please try one for me? All right, hopefully you had a chance to pause the video and try this one. We will use the same formula. A is equal to 1/2 base times height. 1/2, my base is 12. My height is 5. Can I pre-reduce it all here? I can. 1 and 6. 1 times 6 times 5 is just 30. 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. So I'm just going to leave it as 30. All right? So on the back page, I have a little activity for us to do in class. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the sum final thoughts, and then if we have time, we'll go over this activity in class. So for the sum final thoughts, the order of operations are just the rules when you have more than one operation. So if you have adding and multiplying in the same problem, you know which one to do first. Just like multiplying and dividing, when you add or subtract, they happen at the same time, and you do them from left to right, just like we read books. When working with grouping symbols, do everything inside of them like it was a brand new problem, and then work your way out. When you have more than one set of grouping symbols, do the ones that are the most inside. And fraction bars are also grouping symbols. That's why we're just not saying parentheses this year. Fraction bars are also grouping symbols. Do everything on the top and bottom first, and then divide last. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and that's it.